People are absolutely losing their minds over the England versus Argentina World Cup match last night. But the fury isn't over the Thomas Tuchel's tactical errors that many are blaming for England's bitter defeat. Instead, it's been provoked by the Argentinian players holding up a banner after the match that said Las Malvinas son Argentinas, which can probably tell translates to the Falklands are Argentinian. The players had taken the banner from some fans in the crowd. A few hours after the match, in what could best be described as an odd timing, Argentina's foreign minister accused a Royal Navy warship of making a, quote, illegal journey into its waters earlier this month. Number 10 countered that it had notified Argentina of the trip, which it said was to Chile to support British Antarctic survey operations. Now, just in case there's the smallest of chances that you don't know, the Falkland Islands are a British overseas territory, and the background to this row is, of course, the 1982 war fought between Britain and Argentina over the Falklands after Argentina invaded. The 74-day conflict killed 649 Argentinian soldiers, 255 British military personnel, and 3 islanders, and the dispute over sovereignty is ongoing. The reaction here has ranged from calls for increased funding for the Royal Navy, yes, that was Nigel Farage, to demands that Argentina get kicked out of the tournament altogether. Every Argentine player in the English Premier League who took part in this ugly anti-British display should be stripped of their UK work visa. There should be zero tolerance for this. I think they might be going a bit far, Niall, like maybe FIFA would have to look into their rules in terms of no political symbols at the World Cup, but wholesale bans and stripping people of access to tournaments, maybe a bit far. Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey had this to say on Sky News.
I've written to the president of FIFA because these are the rules that he is supposed to implement and make sure are adhered to. It's a clear breach of FIFA's rules, what happened with those Argentine players making a political statement with that banner, which is deeply insulting to the people of the Falkland Islands and to the families of the veterans who gave their lives against that illegal invasion. For that to happen, that's why FIFA has those rules. And FIFA should therefore implement those rules. And that would mean a ban for the 6 Argentine players who were holding that banner and celebrating around it.
Ooh, Ed Davey has written a strongly worded letter to Gianni Infantino. That'll do it. It's got the hand of Trump. The government has also weighed in. Here's Business Secretary Peter Kyle speaking to journalists this morning.
My reaction is that it was entirely inappropriate. Politics needs to be separate from football. In fact, the World Cup has one of its central tenets, that politics is separate from football. Now, that is now a matter for FIFA. I expect FIFA to do its investigation thoroughly.
Or is anyone who looks less convincing in a hard hat and high vis than Peter Kyle answered on a postcard? Keir Starmer later backed Kyle's statement, and Downing Street said that, quote, the World Cup might not be ours, but the Falkland Islands definitely are. Now look, to be clear, there is zero chance of Argentina getting kicked out of the World Cup or any players getting suspended for the final. They've obviously broken FIFA rules on political action and team misconduct, but FIFA usually takes action on things like that after a tournament is finished. And Argentina has been in trouble over this before. In 2014, players held up a banner with the same message before a friendly against Slovenia. FIFA's reaction then was a measly £20,000 fine. But even if there are no immediate consequences for the Argentinian football team, we do seem to be heading for a diplomatic incident. Obviously, the Argentina players did something stupid and crass that they knew was breaking the rules. But did it all need to escalate to this level? Dalia, what do you think? Big fuss over nothing or a serious diplomatic incident?
I mean, I think this is a real case of like everyone just needs to seriously get a grip. I mean, it's a banner. It's not a battleship. And by the way, there is a difference between the two. And I find the fact that the same people who are saying, you know, keep politics out of football. How could you put this banner at the World Cup? You know, how can you use football as a stage for this, you know, highly offensive banner? Are in the same breath being like, well, because of what happened in this football match, we need to fund the Navy. And we need to, you know, do some military posturing. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. And the whole idea of keeping politics out of football, I mean, look, it's never a neutral rule. It's only ever invoked when the politics on display are politics that we don't like or that someone doesn't, you know, when you see politics that you don't like in somewhere like the World Cup, that's when you say, oh, we should keep politics out of football. Because, of course, there's always politics in football, especially in the World Cup. I mean, the World Cup is a global stage that has like millions of eyes on it. It's one of the most important, you know, global stages and most kind of watched global stages that there is. And these kinds of massive global tournaments, whether it's the World Cup or the Olympics, there's always a process of things being hashed out, whether it's like national identity or geopolitics or state building. When Nazi Germany hosted the Berlin Olympics, it was political. When South Africa was the first African country to host the World Cup, that was political. When the coach of the Egyptian football team used Egypt getting to, the furthest they've ever gotten in the World Cup to hang the Palestinian flag, that was political. Like, people are always going to use a stage like the World Cup to make statements. And I think there's a really big difference between, fans or footballers using the pitch to make these statements, which we can then, talk about and discuss and disagree with, versus like actual MPs using it to posture militaristically or to kind of call for people to be banned. That I think is crossing a line. But people using what is a global stage in this way, I think, you can argue about whether it's appropriate or not, but I don't think you can argue that it's going to stop. But also I have to say that with the whole Falklands thing, I do find the whole way in which, Britain is like, well, the most important thing here is self-determination, and I'm just like, be real. Like, that's not why the British state is really preoccupied with the Falkland Islands. The reason that the British state is preoccupied with the Falkland Islands is because there's a ton of gas there, there's a ton of fishing there, and it's a really important, it's like geographically situated in a really important place, and it's really important for like scientific and as a scientific and military base. So let's just be like really real here about why this is a flagship issue. But yeah, I think it just looks incredibly petty. It looks incredibly childish for politicians to be throwing their weight into what is essentially just a banner on a pitch, especially when the British state is currently in power. Like, the Falklands is under British jurisdiction. And if that ever changes, it's not going to be because of a banner on a pitch. It's going to be because of a million other, like, far more important reasons. So I think, yeah, the posturing around like the shock of politics and football, especially when, in this particular World Cup tournament, you have people like, you have like members of football team, like, sorry, I'm not a football person, people from football teams and football staff and fans literally being denied entry to the US because of, Trumpism. And you're trying to tell me that this isn't political? I mean, come on.
Literally, I mean, like, imagine Gianni Infantino being accused of getting political. Heaven forfend that he might get political. It's like people say, oh, Eurovision's become political. Oh, no, has it? Oh, God, I couldn't believe my ears when someone told me Eurovision had become political, especially given, like, the way people use FIFA is geopolitical, right? Like, the interest that Saudi Arabia had in being the people who were going to host it in 2034 was done via being able to lobby with all FIFA member states to be able to vote on kind of the future people who are going to host the World Cup, right? It's used geopolitically. Like, it's always going to be political, and people are never going to be able to get away from that.
Yeah, and I mean, like with Qatar, for example, like why would Qatar, a country that is not a footballing country, and, doesn't actually have an appropriate environment or climate to host a football tournament, spend all that money to host the World Cup? Because it is a huge act of state building, and it opens doors for you in all kinds of other ways. And so, yeah, like it's in the DNA of it. And I think trying to hide behind this technicality that like, oh, this is when football becomes political and this is when it doesn't, like, let's just have a conversation about the politics that's on display, because that's actually the conversation that we're having, not this kind of abstract attachment to the idea that you can take politics out of anything, really, let alone, all of the nations of the world getting together to fight a competitive tournament, like as if that's not going to cause issues, or as if like broader tensions aren't going to be hashed out in that context.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Well, thank you very much, Dalia, for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me, Helena.
It's an absolute pleasure, as always. And thank you, everyone else, for joining at home and tuning in. Come back tomorrow for another live stream from 6 p.m. For now, you've been watching Novara Media. Good night.